Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the most unique, entertaining, and compelling sports talk podcast you'll ever listen to.
Let's be great. Let's be great.
Wendell's World in Sports with the one and only Wendell Wallace.
Giannis charging down the lane to the rim, double clutch, no good, tipped in. Giannis tipped it home.
Subscribe, rate, and review anywhere and everywhere you listen to this and all your favorite podcasts. And now, from Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, Rip, Roaring, and ready to rumble, Wendell Wallace.
Konnichiwa, shalom, wassalam alaikum. What is happening? Namaste, Wendell's World in Sports. Happy 2022. Bonjour, bonsoir, good morning, good abend. Que pasa, mi amigos? Mi llamo Wendell Wallace. Wendell's World in Sports, a YouTube episode of what I put down every single week on my podcast, Wendell's World in Sports. As always, before I start talking about what happened in college football, the championship game that's going to be coming up between Alabama and Georgia, before I start talking about the absurdity of players skipping out and getting criticized for it, or players skipping out of bowl games and getting criticized for it, before I get into any of those things, you know I have to always do this when I do my YouTube episode. Go ahead, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, type in WENDELL''S, Wendell's World and Sports. Download, subscribe, and be entertained and be enthused and be thankful that you'll be listening to the most unique, entertaining sports talk podcast that you can witness to, Wendell's World of Sports. I always ask you to do that, and before I get started, I always want to do this like I do on my podcast. What's happening, man? How you doing? You doing everything that you need to do? 2022 is now starting. Let's see what we can do sincerely. One of your New Year's resolutions has to be, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to listen, I'm going to learn, I'm going to shut up. I'm going to listen, I'm going to learn to those from those of a different gender, from those of a different race, from those of a different financial background, those from a different part of the world, those from the different side of the track, those are from the different part of the country, those who love a different person, those who worship a different God, if they worship a God at all, those who have a different political look on life than you. I'm going to take the time to listen, to learn, to understand and respect that person, and then go ahead and carry it on to the younger generation so it can start that snowball rolling. So 10, 15, 20, 40, 60, 80 years down the line, when these kids are in high school and learning that world history and learning that U.S. government and learning that history, they can actually take a look at the year 2021, 2020, 2018, 19 and such and say, man, them folks were that stupid? Yes, we were. Let's start the process of building a utopian society where people mainly are based on their character, not on the color of their skin, not by their gender, not by their financial background, not by how much money they have, not by how famous they are, not by what type of the tracks they're from, not by any of those measures. Let's just go ahead and just concentrate on if you're a good human being, regardless of who you love, regardless of all the other things. If we could do that, man, wouldn't that be something? Wendell's World of Sports, I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. So glad that you could be with us. Just giving you a quick YouTube version of what's happening, of what's going down, college football. Actually had an opportunity to take a look at a very entertaining Rose Bowl game between Ohio State and Utah. Utah represented itself very well. Ohio State still can't play the defense, but they needed what they had to give to win that football game, 48-45. So Ohio State moves into the offseason very happy. Utah, again, moving into the offseason, has to be feeling good vibes after what they can do. So the college football game, for the games that actually count, because as you know, the games that really count are the semifinal games and the championship game, which is going to be happening in Indianapolis, Indiana next Monday. We have the Alabama Crimson Tide, and we have the Georgia Bulldogs. A rematch. Not only is it a rematch from a couple of weeks ago in the SEC championship game where Alabama put the beat down, put the whoop down, put the spank down on the Georgia Bulldogs, but this is also a rematch of the 2017 national championship game, in which in overtime, of one of the more entertaining college football championships in a little while, the Alabama Crimson Tide in overtime won the game 26-23. If you don't remember that game, on Alabama's first offensive play in overtime, Tua Tagovailoa was sacked for a 16-yard loss, bringing up second and 26. But immediately following that, hit a game-winning 41-yard touchdown pass to Devonta Smith. There you go, touchdown. Bama trailed at halftime 13-3 when Nick Saban replaced Jalen Hurts with Tua, and he came in the second half, made a couple of bad throws, but overall he went 14 for 24 for 166 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, made things happen, and Georgia was denied, Kirby Smart was denied the chance to win that championship in a game really where Georgia should have won that game. But if you take back at that game, and you take a look back at some of the impact players of that game, man, I'm telling you, man, you had Tunga Vailoa, number 1 draft pick by the Dolphins. You had Najee Harris, who was the number 1 draft pick and an impact player for the Pittsburgh Steelers. You had Calvin Ridley, number 1 pick and the number 1 wide receiver for the Atlanta Falcons. You had Sony Michel doing his work for the Los Angeles Rams right now, the leading rusher on that team. Henry Ruggs, who before he made a really stupid decisions, was a first-round draft pick by the Las Vegas Raiders. Devonta Smith, future Heisman Trophy winner, doing good work with the Philadelphia Eagles as their number 1 draft pick. And Mecole Hardman, the guy who looks like he's going to be filling in the number 3 receiving spot for the Kansas City football teams rather well. He not only played in that game for Georgia, he also caught a couple of touchdown passes. So it's going to be interesting to see moving on in this championship game in about a week or so what the future talent is going to be displayed on that field in Indianapolis. But, yeah, that's it, man, in terms of what the championship game is going to be. Alabama and Georgia to set up that championship game in the Cotton Bowl. Alabama over Cincinnati 27-6 in a game where you took a look and you said, yeah, Alabama's the better team. There's no, like, what could have Cincinnati done better and this, that, and the other? Alabama was the better team. From start to first drive to end drive, from first half to second quarter, Alabama, the better team. Brian Robinson Jr. ran for 204 yards on 26 carries. He had 134 yards in the first half alone. Bryce Young was 17 of 28 for 181 yards and 3 touchdowns. Ho-hum game, decent game, professional quality, solid game by the Heisman Trophy winner. But the running game by Alabama and just the overall dominance. There was not one player who saved Alabama or who was the star for Alabama, who was the MVP in this game for Alabama. It was a offense, defense, special teams coaching overmatch by Alabama. Dominance was set early on in the opening drive, Alabama's opening drive. They ran the ball 10 times, and then on the 11th play, they scored. 8-yard touchdown pass from Young to Slay Bolton. Thank you very much. We kind of knew after that what kind of game this was going to be. And the explanation of the game, as I mentioned before, when you take a look at Alabama, when you take a look at their dominance, when you take a look at the fact that they had 27 first downs, Cincinnati had 13. When you take a look at the defense for Alabama holding Cincinnati to 2 of 15 on 3rd and 4th down conversions, when you take a look at the fact that Alabama had 482 yards of total offense, 301 of those yards coming by rush on 47 attempts. When was the last time that you saw that type of dominance in the running game this season from Alabama? And on the other hand, Cincinnati had 218 total yards, averaged 4.5 yards per pass, and they passed the ball 32 times for that 4.5 yards per pass. So I don't know how much we can just extrapolate from what Alabama did and how that's going to carry over in the championship game for Georgia. It was just a solid performance by the Alabama Crimson Tide, who was the better team than Cincinnati. Now, for the Bearcats moving forward, hey, man, you know, this is a situation where the foundation had been set, shall we say, because one of the things is that Cincinnati was not going to be judged fairly on this game, especially if they lost when they lost. This isn't a situation where, you know, we can equate or we can identify or we can explain or we can define the loss for Cincinnati the same way, for instance, if there was a team from the Pac-10 or Pac-12 or there was a team from the Big 12 or maybe if it was a Notre Dame. You see, if, say, for instance, Oklahoma or maybe Texas out of the Big 12 or maybe Clemson out of the ACC, if they would have gotten beat like this and the game would have looked this similar, then the prognostications and the outlook for those teams moving forward down the road for next season, the season after that, would have been a lot different than, say, Cincinnati in terms of if say, for instance, a Oregon or a Clemson or a Texas, whenever they get good. I don't know what century that's going to be in. But if because of what they are, because of where they play, because of the football program that they have, i.e. in the Power 5, a loss like this can be explained away in terms of, hey, this is not going to negate, this is not going to weigh down, this is not going to come into the conversation next season if a team like an Oklahoma, who would have gotten buried by Alabama in a game like this, if they had a season where they only lost one game and they won the Big 12 championship, and they had the same similar type of season that Cincinnati did this season, there's no discussion. There's no debate in terms of if a team from the Big 12 or the Pac-12 or the Big 10 or the ACC or the SEC, there's no debate in terms of next season if they're undefeated, whether they're going to get in or not. It's only a matter of are they going to be number 1, number 2, number 3, or number 4. With Cincinnati now, this loss is going to have some carryover. It shouldn't have any carryover, but it's going to have some carryover. Why? Because they're not from a Power 5 conference. And you could take some of the glass half full explanations, or you could take a look at a glass half full prognostication and forecast for Cincinnati moving forward in terms of, Luke Fickell didn't go to LSU. Luke Fickell, as of right now, is not going to the NFL to be a head coach. Luke Fickell didn't take the job at Oklahoma. Luke Fickell didn't take the job at USC. So you have that coach coming back along with the majority of his assistants, offensive coordinator, position coaches and such, and he can go into these living rooms and he can say, hey, look, we made it to the college football playoff semifinals. Let me go ahead and I can recruit some more of those 4-star recruits. And I might even be lucky enough to get myself a 5-star recruit. And we should be mentioning this, with the transfer portal being so active, why can't Cincinnati get a player from Oklahoma, get a player from an LSU, get a player from a USC, get a player from Alabama, who came in as a 5-star recruit, who came in the ESPN Top 300, and he's not getting the playing time that he wants. Whether it's his fault, their fault, whoever's fault, maybe he wants to go somewhere where he can shine. Maybe he wants to go somewhere as a sophomore after sitting out his redshirt year and then not getting any playing time in his freshman year, and he sees this sophomore quarterback, or he sees this freshman quarterback, or he sees this sophomore linebacker, or he sees this redshirt freshman offensive lineman or running back or wide receiver or tight end or whatever the position may be. This guy sees this and says, I'm not going to be getting any time. Let me go ahead and let me transfer somewhere where I can play right away. Why not then have one of his options be Cincinnati, especially if he's from that area of town? If you're a guy who went to Ohio State because you were a 5-star recruit and ranked in the top 150, and you thought you were going to be getting a lot of time, but unfortunately because it is Ohio State and you won't be getting that playing time, or you won't be getting the fanfare, or you won't be getting the opportunities that you feel you deserve, and if you want to stay close to home because you're from that northern Ohio, western Pennsylvania, Michigan type of area, why then would you not want to go to Cincinnati and be the man down there? So there's a lot of things moving forward now with Luke Fickell, that he can look forward to and say, hey, man, this is what we're talking about. And I'm glad that eventually the NCAA is going to be expanding, whether it be in 2024 or 2025. I'm glad that they're going to be expanding to 12 games, because this could be, for Cincinnati's football program, this could be the start for them to becoming the Gonzaga of college football. You know how Gonzaga started with Dan Monson, and then they moved to Mark Few, and they kept building, and they went from, oh, isn't that nice, the nice little Jesuit school in Spokane, Washington, and oh, isn't that nice with the Dan Dickals and all these guys, and oh yeah, that was the school that produced John Stockton. Oh, isn't that cool, and everything. That's a nice little school. That's a nice little story. Oh, they made it to the NCAA and actually won a game. Oh, isn't that cute? Isn't that wonderful? Good old Gonzaga. Here, let me pay. Good job there. And they kept growing, and they kept growing, and they kept growing, and they started getting players from Australia and others to help them out and get better. They went to Europe and got the Sabonis kid and others. They went to Australia and picked up some good players. Then all of a sudden they get Adam Morrison, who overachieves and becomes a All-American by his junior year, and he gets all these players, and they start building this program. Now Gonzaga is one of the elite college basketball teams in the country, and it really doesn't care the fact that they're not in the ACC or the Big East or the Pac-12 or the Big 12 or the Big 10 or any of these schools. It doesn't matter, or any of these conferences. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because they're in a tournament where, guess what? They're in a position where they play in a tournament where they can actually win a tournament. And this was the case 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago, 10 years ago. So with the expansion of college football, all of a sudden now, maybe there's some five-star recruits who in the year 2026, 2027 don't want to go to Ohio State, don't want to go to a Michigan, don't want to go to a Notre Dame, don't want to go to a school in the SEC. They want to stay in their region. They want to stay in their part of the country. And they know going to Cincinnati, the best non-Power 5 school in the country, even though by then they'll be in the Big 12. But in a program like that, yeah, we can go ahead and we can still make the NCAA championship for football. Because as it stands right now, Cincinnati has no chance. As it stands right now with the 14 playoff, Cincinnati will never get an opportunity like this again to play for a championship. Never. Going undefeated, don't care. Dominating the non-Power 5, don't care. This is a situation that they'll never get an opportunity. So now, guess what? Now, with the expansion of the playoff, they can have the opportunity that was not given to someone like a Boise State, which is to build a program to where, hey, man, guess what? With that 12-team playoff, we can go ahead and we can be true contenders for the National Football Program. It ain't going to happen in 2022. It's not going to happen in 2023, 24. But when they expand, hopefully Cincinnati will be in a position to be true contenders in a new conference, to be true contenders for a championship. Wendell's World of Sports, the YouTube episode of what I put down. Georgia beat Michigan 34-11. I guess the last time we saw Georgia, right, they were on the field being humbled, humiliated by Alabama in the SEC championship game. Well, I guess Georgia learned their lesson, right? Because especially on defense, they look like the Georgia that we all know and love, at least down in Athens. Michigan's offense came in averaging about 37 points per game. Nope, sorry, we're going to hold you to 11. 328 yards of total offense. In the first half, Georgia's defense held Michigan to just 101 yards total, 29 yards rushing, 5 first downs. That's domination, Holmes. Georgia led at halftime 27-3. Looks like they learned from their beatdown against Alabama in a positive way. Stetson Bennett, solid, 21 of 31, 313 yards and 3 touchdowns. Running game had 190 yards on 35 carries. 4 different running backs had 145 yards combined. No one over the yardage of 58. Hey, man, you know what? Hey, good for them, man. Good for them. And I really do think that Georgia learned from that beatdown that they had against Alabama. As I mentioned it before, man, when you're cruising and you're doing your thing that Georgia had all season long and weren't really tested in terms of having a competitive game, you might say the season opener against Clemson, but how inept that offense was for really both teams, but especially for Clemson, going into the SEC championship game, Georgia hadn't faced a team like Alabama. They hadn't faced a quarterback like Bryce Young. They hadn't faced the weapons that Alabama had on their team. So you had Georgia running roughshod through everybody. And for the first time in over a year, they're facing a team where it's like, whoa, their athletes are in some cases better, and in most cases just as good as ours. So I think that was a little bit of a wake-up call for Georgia to say, oh, okay, now I understand what the competition is like in terms of what Alabama's all like, right? It's like being in a boxing match against a guy who has a reputation for punching hard. Well, you don't know how hard that guy really punches until, I don't know, you get hit by him. And then it's like, oh, shit, this guy can really punch. Okay, now I know what they talk about. You can talk about it, but until you feel it, until you experience it, it's like, oh, okay, let me go ahead and adjust to what I'm going to be doing. I think in the time between the semifinal games and the championship game, I think Georgia's going to do some things. Stetson Bennett, that's the key, though. Stetson Bennett, can he win a championship? Because Stetson Bennett, if Georgia plays their game, Stetson Bennett is not going to be dependent upon that squad to win a championship game. When they're up 27-3 at halftime and the defense is rolling like that, Stetson Bennett doesn't need to be a hero. Stetson Bennett doesn't need to be the star player. Stetson Bennett doesn't need to be the star of this production called Georgia's domination in the semifinal game against Michigan in the college football playoffs coming to a theater near you. He doesn't need to be a Denzel. He doesn't need to be a Tom Hanks. He doesn't need to be that role. He doesn't need to shine like that. When the running game is like that, when the defense is playing like that, that feeds into Stetson Bennett. It's not the other way around. Stetson Bennett is not going to be asked to carry the offense. Stetson Bennett is not going to be asked to make plays on a consistent basis so it can enhance the offense, which is in turn can motivate and inspire and elevate the play of the defense. It's the other way around. If the defense is rolling, that the running game is rolling, then Stetson Bennett can be the Stetson Bennett that Georgia fans all talk about, oh, we can win a championship with them. Offensive coordinator for Georgia's up there talking about we can win a championship with Stetson Bennett. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Absolutely, Georgia can win a championship with Stetson Bennett. Georgia can't win a championship with Stetson Bennett if he has to throw 45 times. Stetson Bennett can't win a championship if the defense is going to play at the same level that they did against Alabama. Stetson Bennett can't win a championship for Georgia if the running game is nil. But if those things are humming and they're working, Stetson Bennett, without question, can win them a championship. So this is a repeat. I'm going to be talking about this. I'll be talking about all of this on my podcast, Wendell's World of Sports. Download, review, follow, rate, subscribe, anywhere where you listen to your favorite podcast. I'm going to be talking about this on my show, which is going to be dropping by Wednesday, by this upcoming Wednesday, January 5th. Happy holidays. Happy 2022, everybody. But I'm just going to be asking the question, man, are you really excited about this December 10th game between Alabama and Georgia? I mean, does it do anything for you? Let's just say, for instance, I know for Alabama fans, I know for SEC fans, I know for Georgia fans, I know for diehard college football fans. Yeah, I know because we got the two best teams playing in the championship. One thing that we could talk about, you could sit there and talk about, Cincinnati didn't belong in a Power 5 conference school, didn't belong. After taking a look at these games, if you're taking a look at the Orange Bowl, if you're taking a look at the Rose Bowl that was played a couple of hours ago, if you're taking a look at the Sugar Bowl, if you're taking a look at any of these other games, if you're taking a look at the Ohio States and the Michigan States and the Pittsburghs and the Utahs and the Baylors and the Notre Dames and the Oklahoma States and the Mississippis, name me a team that would have been better than Cincinnati. Forgetting the fact that Cincinnati actually deserved to be there, who else were you going to be sitting there talking about? Damn it, if Alabama would have played Oklahoma State, it would have been much different. Damn it, if Alabama would have played Utah, then that would have been a real contest. Damn it, if Alabama would have played Pittsburgh or Michigan State, damn it, that would have been so much better. Name me a team, because I don't see one. So we can sit there, we can lament, we can all say because of what happened with Cincinnati being in the playoffs of a 14 playoff and what happened in the semifinal games, and now we have another SEC all-championship final. We could sit here and start talking about 12-team playoffs, and then while I agree, I think a 12-team playoffs would be a little bit more exciting. A lot more exciting. Take a look at the format for this season, where you have the first-round byes being Michigan, Alabama, Cincinnati, and Baylor, because Baylor won their conference championship while Georgia lost their conference championship to Alabama. So the first-round byes would be number 1, Alabama, number 2, Michigan, number 3, Cincinnati, winner of the AAC, and number 4, Baylor. So the first-round matchups would be number 8 Ole Miss versus number 9 Oklahoma State, with the winner playing number 1 Alabama. Number 5 Georgia would play number 12 Pittsburgh, with the winner playing number 2 Michigan. Notre Dame would be number 6. They would play the number 11 seeded Utah Utes, with the winner playing Cincinnati. I could take a look at that game and say the winner. Now you could make the argument, the winner of Utah and Notre Dame, would they be favored if they played Cincinnati? I know Ole Miss, the winner of Ole Miss, Oklahoma State, would not be favored against Alabama. Georgia would be favored against Michigan if they beat Pittsburgh. Ohio State, number 7 versus number 10 Michigan State, that winner would play Michigan. So I'm just sitting here thinking, and I'm looking at this, and I'm saying, where is it that there would be a change of the finals? I just don't see it. Now, every game, with more chances to play, the chances of you losing increase if you're Alabama, Michigan, Cincinnati, Michigan, Baylor and such. But the two best teams are playing in the championship game. They just so happen to be from the SEC. If you like a little variety and you don't care about the two best teams playing, then okay, that's fine. That's cool. But for me, I'd always like to see the two best teams. They just happen to be from the same conference, so be it. Wendell's World of Sports, I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. So glad that you could be with us. Just a YouTube episode of what I'm putting down. Remember, as always, Wendell's World in Sports, the podcast, similar type of show. In fact, a lot of these topics or a lot of these things I'm speaking about on college football tonight, Saturday, I'm going to be putting on my podcast, which is going to drop it like it's hot on Wednesday. I'm going to end the podcast, YouTube episode podcast, talking about this. Kirk Herbstreit and Desmond Howard. Head-scratching, eye-rolling, tone-deaf, out-of-touch comment made by both of them in regards to players opting out of bowl games to prepare for the NFL or the NFL draft. We get this every once in a while when an older generation gets on the lawn and starts yelling about what's wrong with today's players. Before it was these guys leaving early, these guys should stay 4 years. Then it was these guys should not be getting paid because they're scholarship players, they're getting their scholarship and all these type of things. And then there was the transfer portal, or there was the transfer rules about, if you're playing in the SEC and you decide to transfer, that there's certain teams that you can't transfer to, and the coach had the power to determine where you transfer and not, and why that's a good idea, and transfers need to sit out a year, all of this nonsense, which is antiquated and out of date and very oppressive if you really think about it. All of this stuff is starting to come down, but now we're getting into the old guard talking about, oh my goodness gracious, I cannot believe the fact that these kids are going to be opting out and getting ready for the NFL draft, and they're not interested in playing in the Toilet Bowl, they're not interested in playing in the Outback Bowl, they're not interested in playing the Sponsors Get Us Rich Bowl, they're not playing in the Who Gives a Fuck Bowl, they're not interested in playing in the No One's Going to Come Watch Us Bowl. I can't believe it. What's going on here? This is terrible. This is horrible. This is a disgrace. This is a tragedy. This is all this bullshit. So Herbstreit was speaking about this. In fact, this is exactly what Mr. Herbstreit said in regards to, I just think that, when it comes down to it, I think this era of player just doesn't love the game of football.
Like, what's the difference as a player in saying these games are meaningless when, Des, we played in quote-unquote meaningless games? I mean, I know you guys were here a lot, but I just don't understand. If you don't make it to the playoff, how is it meaningless to play football and compete? Isn't that what we do as football players? We compete. So I don't know if changing and expanding it is going to change anything. I really don't. I think this era of player just doesn't love football.
Oh yes. What's the difference as a player in saying that these games are meaningless when, Des, we played in quote-unquote meaningless games? I mean, guys, Michigan here in the Rose Bowl a lot, but I just don't understand, if you don't make it to the playoffs, how is it meaningless to play football and compete? Isn't that what we do as football players? We compete. So I don't know if changing or expanding is going to change anything. I really don't. Pause. Like, should I say this shit? Fuck it, I want to say it. I think this era of player just doesn't love football. Well, Desmond doesn't want to be one-upped on stupidity. He, hey, look, man, I get it. I get it. You're on television. You have to say something compelling, especially with these guys where, ESPN, Kirk Herbstreit, College Game Day, their discussions, their thoughts, and their opinions, they're going to go viral. They're going to go on social media. People who are scribes, people who are, who do this for a living in terms of analyzing and giving opinions, and they're going to weigh in on what Herbstreit says. They're going to weigh in on what Desmond Howard says. They're going to weigh in on what the fellas on College Game Day say. So there is some weight in what they say. They're just not shooting from the hip. So they can't go out on these programs and be boring and bland and vanilla and not say anything. They have to say something which I think they sincerely believe in. I don't think they're pulling stuff out of their ass like the guy on the Shannon and Skip show. So I think that this is a situation where these guys are speaking from the heart where they say this. But Desmond Howard, wanting to be part of the clueless and ridiculous club, this is what he said.
That's what I was about to say. We're dealing with a total different mentality when we're dealing with these student athletes nowadays, especially the football players. I mean, their whole mentality right now is about the championship, the playoff. We got to get into the CFB or the CFP. And because of that, they don't value the bowl games. Now, when we were coming up, Herb Street and myself, like to go to a bowl game was a huge reward for a fantastic season. That's what it meant. It's like, okay, your team played this well, so you're going to be rewarded by going to this bowl game. You're going to get a ring. You're going to get swag. Now, kids don't really care about that. They have a sense of entitlement, and it's like if we're not going to the one that matters, then it just doesn't have as much value to them as it did us growing up.
Just concluding. Yep, that's what I was about to say there, Kirk. We're dealing with a different mentality when we're dealing with these student athletes nowadays, especially the football players. I mean, their whole mentality right now is about the championship, the playoffs. We got to get them to the CFP. And because of that, they don't value the bowl games. Now, when we were coming up, back in the good old days, when we were coming up, Herbie, Herb Street and myself, to go to a bowl game was a huge reward for a fantastic season. That's what it was. That's what it meant. It's like, okay, your team played this well, so you're going to be rewarded by going to this bowl game. You're going to get a ring. You're going to get swag. I didn't know they had the term swag when Dez was playing, but all right, keep going. Now kids don't really care about that. They have a sense of entitlement. And it's like, if we're not going to one of these games that matter, then it just doesn't have as much value to them as it did us growing up. Damn it. Make college football great again. Doggone it. These spoiled, entitled, pampered, selfish brats. How dare they leave their brothers? How dare they leave their coaches? The guys who were part of their life, the guys who were shaping them when they came in as young, immature, wet behind the ear young boys who didn't know what was up from down, who didn't know sun up from sunset, who didn't know the word from a verb, who didn't even know a noun from a clown. How dare these players turn their backs on these guys by going early to the pros and leaving their brothers and sisters and their coaches behind to play in this bowl game? How can anybody do that? How can you leave your team in Shreveport, Louisiana for this all-important bowl game because you're selfish somebody wants to play and get ready for the NFL draft? How dare you? How dare you? Herb Street later came back to clarify what he meant in terms of all players are not loving the game. He said, I just want to clarify some of my comments from earlier today. Of course, some players love the game and some players love the game the same today as ever, but some don't. I'll always love the players of this game. And sorry if people thought I generalized or lumped them all into one category. Well, not only that there, Kirk, are you going to apologize because not only did you lump today's players, you also lumped yesterday's players. Because what you were insinuating was today's players don't care, but yesterday's players, they all care. And I'll be goddamned if I'm not going to be going back to the Kirk Hurst Street era, the Desmond Howard era, the era before that, and before that, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, 70 years ago, whenever college football started. I am quite sure not every single player who played college football played for the love of the game. I am quite sure. If you want to make the argument that back in the day more of them did as far as the percentage is concerned than today, all right. But damn it, you're up there, Kurt's up there talking about, I didn't want to generalize today's players for being not falling in love or not being in love with the game. Kurt, just what? By you saying that, you're saying that everybody you played with loved the game. And I'm quite sure there's many, 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 many examples of that not happening. So you should also apologize for the player you played with and what Desmond played with in the eras before by saying that all you guys loved the game of football, because not all of them did. I guarantee you not all of them did. So my question for Kirk Herbstreit is this. Look, man, are you saying that today's players are playing in these bowl games for the love of the school and the love of their teammates and thanking them and wanting to play in the bowl games and this is wonderful and this is awesome? Are you saying that, Kirk, or could you also make the argument that there's a lot of different reasons other than love of playing for your school, love of the name on the front of the jersey, what's on the name of the helmet, your coaches, your players and such? There's a lot of different reasons why these players are playing in this game. Maybe there's a player who needs more game film so he can get ready for the NFL draft. So this is an excellent opportunity for him to be on a big stage, for him to be playing in another game where he can get some tape so he can give the NFL scouts or an agent or somebody to start his NFL career. Unlike first rounders or high first round draft picks or second round draft picks, maybe this kid needs the opportunity to have a great game in a bowl game, the last game that anybody sees him, so he can get himself some tape for the NFL. Isn't that being selfish? He's not giving a damn whether the team wins or loses. He doesn't give a damn about any of that. He's like, hell, if I can get 3 sacks and we lose 16-7, I don't give a shit. But if I get outplayed and we win 24-14, that's terrible for me. You're not saying that there's not players who have that type of mentality? You're not saying that there's players who are strictly coming back to play in this bowl game just to enhance their possibilities, their opportunities to get drafted? You're not saying that these players who are underclassmen, who are going to be coming back next year, they don't give a damn whether they win or lose a football game. Some of these guys, they don't give a damn whether they win or lose some meaningless exhibition game. This is a situation where I can start off in terms of the off-season workout. I can start making my move toward being a starter for next season. Or I can start, especially if you're speaking about quarterbacks who are coming in. Kenny Pickett and these guys for Pittsburgh who left early. I mean, this now gives some of these quarterbacks the opportunity to put themselves in the lead going into the next season in terms of starting quarterback. So, yeah, if I'm the backup quarterback for Pittsburgh, if I'm the backup quarterback for Mississippi, if I'm the backup quarterback for any of these quarterbacks who are looking to be first-round draft picks, if I'm the backup quarterback for Sam Howell over at North Carolina, yeah, man, I want you to go. Don't play any games. No, you're right. Go ahead, get ready for the NFL draft. In fact, you don't even have to play the last part of the game. You can leave right now. If you want to miss the regular season games, go ahead. Start preparing for your NFL career right now. I'll be more than happy to take your spot. And that goes with the running back. That goes with the offensive lineman. That goes with the linebacker. If I'm a backup offensive lineman and I see some guy thinking about the guy that's ahead of me on the depth chart, and he's thinking about calling it quits early so he can get ready for the NFL draft, I'm like, yeah, go, baby, go. Because guess who's going to get that opportunity to play? Me. So I'm quite sure there's a percentage. I don't know what the percentage is. I don't know if it's the majority or the minority. But I'm quite sure there's players out there who are playing in this bowl game. They don't give a fuck whether this team wins or loses or not. If I'm a wide receiver and I catch 7 passes for 175 yards and 3 touchdowns and we lose, shoot, I'm dancing in the streets like Martha and the Vandellas and dancing on the ceiling like Lionel Richie. If I catch 2 passes and we win, you think I'm going to be happy? And with my competition, if my competition at the wide receiver position catches 6 balls for 114 yards and a couple of touchdowns and win game MVP, and I'm relegated to 2 catches on 3 targets for 12 yards, you think I'm going to be happy about that? Hell no. That guy just got ahead of me to be the starter for next season. But if I catch 7 passes for 152 yards and 3 touchdowns and we lose while my competition drops a couple, hell yeah, I'm happy. I don't give a damn whether we win or lose or not. Who cares? I'm just trying to, right now, get myself started on my NFL path by, guess what? Getting this bowl game started and being great and getting the opportunity to have more opportunities to be an NFL player. So what are we talking about here, Kirk? When we're speaking about this, where are we going with that? So that's just my only deal with the absurdity and the stupidity of, oh yeah, man, but back in the day, we all played like it was like it was the end of the world for us. Kirk, here's the problem. You see, you knew very early, at least I hope you did, that you were not going to the NFL. Kirk Herbstreit was not going to be an NFL player, at least not a quarterback. I'm quite sure that midway, somewhere through your college football career at Ohio State, you realized that. So guess what? You knew that playing in the bowl games, especially if you're a senior, that was going to be it. This was going to be the last time something that you loved dearly, probably more than anything else that you've ever done in your life leading up to that point, was going to be over. Your dream of playing in the NFL was not happening. So the last game that you played for the school that you loved was going to be this bowl game. So yeah, you took a more passionate approach. You knew this was going to be your last time playing football at a high level or even an organized level. This is it. Your career was over. So yes, playing in a bowl game for you was something that, hell yeah, I'm going to do it, because if I don't play in the bowl game, that's going to be it. Desmond Howard, I mean, at the time, players just didn't have that opportunity. Players weren't really thinking about that opportunity to say, you know what, I'm shutting it down. It would be interesting to see Desmond Howard, the winner of the Heisman Trophy that year that he won. I think it was 91. And then he was the number 1 draft pick by the Washington football team and didn't make it as a receiver, but made it as a punt returner or kickoff returner. It'll be interesting. It would be interesting now to ask Desmond Howard for real, if given that opportunity back in the day. Now, I'm quite sure he'd be like, oh, no, I would never leave Michigan. No, Lloyd Carr was good for me. Whatever. Given the opportunity, it would be interesting to see if Desmond Howard would have the same opinion that he had with some of these other guys. And they didn't name anybody by name, and Herbstreit and Howard weren't calling anybody out by name, but I found it humorous and ridiculous and everything else in between for those guys to be saying that type of stuff. So I just wanted to get that off my chest. All right, that's it. That's it for me in terms of this episode of Wendell's World of Sports. There's a lot more on my podcast that I'm going to be speaking about. Just finished watching the Golden State Warriors and the Utah Jazz play. I'm going to be speaking about that and some other basketball-related things on my podcast. Of course, on Wednesday when I drop it, I'm going to be speaking about what's happening in the NFL, the tight race, man, in the AFC. So I want to get into all of the playoff scenarios, who's doing great, who's not doing great, everything else that's happening in the world of sports I'll be talking about on my podcast. So remember, anywhere where you listen to your favorite podcast, WENDELL apostrophe S, Wendell's World and Sports, you go ahead, you download, subscribe, rate, review, and most importantly, enjoy the most entertaining, thought-provoking sports talking podcast that you can listen to with the greatest music that you could ever listen to. My name is Wendell Wallace. Stay strong, stay humble, love each other in terms of human beings. Don't judge. Do the best you can, and you'll be absolutely fine. You got it? Got it. Music.